Hey everyone, welcome to this 10x live stream. There's a lot to talk about today, so hope you stay with me. I've got to talk a bit quieter today, so do let me know if you can't hear me. I can turn up the gain on my microphone. So yeah, let's get going. It's a bit bigger for you. It was 7th of May, the last stream, so 3 months ago. And there's been a lot that's happened since then, as I said. And there's been 110 updates and 353 changes. And I'm not going to go through all of them, it would take far too long. But you can see, let's just bring up my website. So as you can see, it's all documented, everything that's been happening if you haven't been keeping up with it since then. And a lot of these things are things that come up that I get in our Discord channel and in the GitHub issues. So I've been responding to people mostly. And in between all of that, I've been trying to fit in the features I've been working on, which I'm going to talk about today. So the big news basically is I am now feature complete, which is an absolute amazing milestone. I'm so relieved to have finally got there. It's been a long journey. So what does feature complete mean? It means I've finished all of the main tasks, all of the big tasks. It doesn't mean I'm not going to ever add any more features. Obviously, to the next, there'll always be more features coming in. But I'm feature complete for version 1.0, which means I can release it to the world and say it's a ready, finished product. There'll be small features probably going in, stuff on GitHub issues still, before I get actually version 1. But all the major work is now done. So I'm not going to be adding any big, new, scary features, which is a relief. So yeah, I'm going to ask to speak quieter. Do ask me questions as we go. This is much better if it's interactive. I'm not a great fan of just sitting here talking for half an hour. It's much better if you ask me questions or make comments. What I'm going to talk about first. Okay, as it is next, let's talk about telemetry. I just want to quickly show you. As I'm sure you're aware, I collect a little bit of telemetry on usage of 10x, how people are using it. And as you can see, we've reached a new highest, this is the number of hours used per day across all users. So I've reached a highest peak yet, which is great. And interestingly, the number of users hasn't really changed much. And the main reason for that is because I haven't been promoting it. I haven't been on Twitter much. I haven't been doing these live streams. So mainly it's just been the same people using it. A few people coming, a few people going, which is fine. But the nice thing is that means that everyone who is using it is now using it more, which is a really good sign. It means it's more robust, stable, and does what people want it to do. I thought I'd show you. This is over the last year or so. If we go back to the start, so this is the same graph, but from, you can't quite see it, but 2020 when I released the first beta version to the public. And as you can see, it's been growing steadily with a few big jumps like there and another big jump here. And now we're up here. So hopefully that graph will continue going up. Yeah, it's a really nice metric to have to let me know whether I'm winning or not, whether I'm succeeding. And we have had an increase in bugs. Now the increase in bugs I think was due to, well, I know it was due to changes I made to handle external changes to the parser. Sorry, external changes to the files and then it reparses. So when you do a sync from GitHub or Perforce or whatever, and a whole bunch of files change, then the parser has to refresh. And there were quite a few problems with that, and I changed the way it was working, and obviously there were some teething issues with how it was working at the start. But hopefully that's calmed down now, and I'm expecting these crash bugs to fall off. So that's where we are with the telemetry. Can you talk about your views of the ethics of telemetry? Also, where is it stated that what is collected? Okay, yeah, I'm not a big fan of telemetry in general, and so I collect the minimum amount possible. It literally sends a few bytes of data per day, so it's just how much time the app was in focus and how many times it was used per day and how many crash bugs it had. And that's literally all. It's like 3 ints or something. That's all I send. It's stored. You can turn it on and off in the settings. So in your settings file, there's an enable telemetry setting. And after you've used 10x a few times, it should pop up a dialog box asking you whether you want to enable telemetry or not. So it's perfectly up to you whether you want to enable it or not. That's absolutely fine. So, I mean, obviously I don't know how many people have it disabled. Maybe lots more people have it disabled, so I'm not seeing it in the stats. But anyway, that's the best I can do. And it's just something to keep me motivated and know whether what I'm doing is actually working and whether people want to use it. But other than that, I don't want to collect any more telemetry. And obviously all of this is totally anonymous, so I don't know who's using it or when or what for or anything at all. Literally just a number of hours used per day. So yeah, that's my views on telemetry. I don't think I may add 1 or 2 things in the future, but I'm never going to add loads of telemetry, and it'll always be opt-in. So yeah, minimal amount possible, but just something to keep me going, keep me motivated. Okay. So how can you tell the users apart so you can count them? I actually store just a unique hash for each person, and that unique hash I think is made from the Windows GUID, and so it's completely anonymous. I don't know. It's just a number. All I get is a number, a unique number for every person. So yeah, I'm not storing any data really at all that I could use in any way. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, per machine, and same user. Yeah. Right, so I can't remember whether I mentioned this before, but I haven't been using 10x to develop 10x. I haven't been using it as my main editor. I've used it on and off occasionally, but it hasn't been my main editor up till now, which is a bit weird. I think I talked about this last time and gave the reasons why, so you can look back at that video if you're interested. But anyway, now I'm getting close to release. 10x is good enough for anyone to use, including me. So I've now started using it as my main editor. And it was interesting. I found a few more reasons why I wasn't using it. And one of them was that it's really tricky when you're developing a bit of software, but you're also potentially modifying that software at the same time. For example, like in app data and all the settings, if I happen to change a setting in here and I'm also debugging 10x editor as well, then that's going to suddenly change what I'm debugging, and it can be very awkward and difficult to kind of handle that. So I realized that's one of the reasons why I was kind of avoiding it in the past. The other thing I've done is, so to get around that, I just realized all I have to do is literally just change the folder in app data. So all your settings and personal data is stored in app data. And that includes all the caching of the parser and everything else. So all I had to do is literally change the folder name when I detect I'm in development development mode. So I just have 10x dev, and then everything is unique. So now I've got a completely self-contained environment. I can change anything while I'm editing, and it's not going to change what I'm debugging. So I don't know why I didn't think to do that before, because it was like a one-line change. But anyway, that's working out really well. The other thing I've done, so if I start debugging this, I realise I get very confused where I'm at, because I always work on just one monitor, except for when I'm streaming. I often get confused as, am I in the debugging process or am I in my development process? So why isn't that coming up? There we go. Oh, switch back. So what I've done is I've just changed the color scheme, which again is a really simple thing, but it just helps me so much. Let's go back to my development. So I'm developing here. So I hit debug, and up comes the debug session, which is green. So I know that I'm in the development, debugging build, and I've made it not full screen. So just stupid little things like that have made it really a whole lot easier for me to work in 10x, writing the code, and then debugging here, and it's a lot easier. And I think, was there one other thing I did? Oh yeah, I've bound my not a tab key but the caps lock key to switch. So I just have to hit the caps lock key, and it brings up 10x. So wherever I am, if I'm debugging in Visual Studio, just hit caps lock, and I'm there. And that's a really nice thing to do. I really recommend it if you're using a separate editor, because I'm so used to using Visual Studio where I edit and debug in the same environment. So just to have a key that I can just hit, brings back 10x is really useful. So I'd recommend that if you're not used to switching between debugger and your editor. So yeah, that's the changes in my workflow. I've talked about the updates, so just to briefly go through some of them, I've been doing quite a few improvements to the Unreal parsing, and the defines headers. For those of you who know how Unreal works, it creates a load of headers which define a load of stuff, and 10x will hopefully now for every file find these headers that are automatically included, similar to precompiled headers, and it means that a lot more stuff is parsed correctly. So that was quite a tricky thing to do, but it's definitely worth doing. Improvements to syntax highlighting and the color schemes. I created a new color scheme. I don't know if you like it. Sunset. I've made it the default because I really like it at the moment. We'll see how long that lasts. And there have been quite a few other color schemes added by various people, which is really nice. Anyway, you can go through those in your own time and find ones you like. Spice is a new one. Anyway, I like Sunset. Okay, someone said the multi-line macro bug was the only one that's preventing me from switching. I'm also quitting to 10x after that's fixed. Multi-line macro bug. I'm just trying to remember which one that is. Do you mean where you call a macro over multiple lines, like that? Is that what you mean? I know there's a bug in there for that. I can't think of any other multi-line macro bug. But anyway, let me know. Send me an email or something, or on Discord if you're on our Discord channel, and I'll take a look at that. This bug is a little bit tricky because currently on my macro preprocessor is done per line. So it's going to be a little bit fiddly to get that done. But if that's anything that's stopping you, I'll definitely take a look at that. Okay, so the other thing I'm really liking in the debugging is the syncing between Visual Studio and the debugger and 10x. So I can stick a breakpoint there, and then if I go to Visual Studio, no, it hasn't worked. For some reason it hasn't. Oh yeah, there it is. So then breakpoints are synced between Visual Studio and 10x, and I found that really useful. And also just stopping and starting the debugger with Shift F5 and F5 is really nice as well. So that's working pretty well. Okay, yeah, it is that macro bug. Okay, I'll take a look at that. Right. I've also been gradually adding more Vim support. Vim is a really big topic, so it's going to be a long time before it's good enough for everyone's. The way everyone seems to use Vim slightly differently. So do let me know if there are bugs. You can also maybe fix the bugs yourself. It's all in Python script, vim.py. So do take a look at that and just see. It might be a very simple thing that's easily fixable. Lots of parser fixes, and optimisations, memory optimisations, and speed optimisations in the parsing. So that's always been a big thing in 10x. As I said, Discord requests, and line endings. So there was a thing where when 10x opened a file, it would detect the line endings that were used. And then when it saved the file, it would just replace all line endings with that line ending. But there are cases where you may have an old legacy file which has a mixed line endings. So you've got some lines that are just /n and some are /r/n. And 10x would just choose the one that was used the most and replace all line endings. But that can be a real pain if you have got an old file with a mixture and then you're checking into Perforce or something, then you really don't want to be changing half the lines in the file. So now 10x will correctly preserve the line endings for each line, whatever that happens to be, and when it saves, it will use those preserved line endings. Surprisingly, that was a really difficult task to do. Because it changed the way all lines are stored in the files, in the editor and in the parser, and changed almost every editing function that there is, and so many edge cases to detect. But anyway, that's done now. So hopefully there won't be any problems with that. So let's get on to the last two features that I've done. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on them, but do ask any questions about them if you've got them. The word wrap and the collapsible regions, or code folding, as you like to call it. So what's that? Well, code folding, as you probably know, is you can collapse functions, expand them, and obviously there are also shortcuts for doing that. Control-Shift, square bracket, and open and close, and obviously word wrap. So there are two ways to turn it on. You can do it per file, where you just right click and turn it on there. As you can see, it's actually better if I turn on line numbers. So not much to say about word wrap. It works as you'd expect, I hope. The other way you can turn it on is, if I turn it off there, is through the menu and the view menu. You can turn it on here, and that will turn it on by default for all files, and that's the one that's stored in your settings file. So you can either change it here or in the settings file, and then every file you open will either have word wrap or not. But this is just per individual file, and you can also do that in the build window and in the output panel. Where's it gone? Yeah, you can turn it on there as well. it's often useful in the build window mostly. Because as you know, some errors can be very long, and that's probably one of the most common requests I've had for word wrap is in the build output window. So that should all work as expected. Can you show collapse at the same time as line numbers? It only shows if you hover over it at the moment. Just because I didn't want to clutter the UI. So yeah. Okay, so question, do you think parser code can be written in a sane way, or is it known to be complex no matter what due to a lot of branchings? Well, I like to think I've written it in a sane way, but it is a complex thing. It's always going to be. I assume that's what you mean, like the 10x parser and how it's written. It is very complex. It's just that is the nature of it. The way I've written it is much simpler than if I was writing a C++ compiler, for example, which is what a lot of editors use. So that makes it simpler to maintain and faster. But maybe it's not quite so complete as a full C++ parser would be. But yeah, it is complex. So question, it takes a whole word on next line for word wrapping. Don't most editors usually split words? I wasn't sure about that. I mean, I've never used word wrap in my coding, so I don't actually know. I assumed it did it per word. The ones I checked did anyway. But yeah, I could easily change it to split words. The other thing that's been requested is that to preserve tabs. So like this word wrap would be tabbed in here, which I think is a really nice idea. So I'll try and get that added. But yeah, let me know how you get on with it, because I can easily change it now. So question, to cut column to add it, can we get that switch back if we turn it off? Okay, yeah, I didn't mention that. That's a good point. So you can turn off the collapse, expand, margin, and then it's gone. So if I turn line numbers off as well, there's still a margin there, but there's no collapse, expand there. And if you want to get rid of that margin as well, you can with the margin width. But that's a little bit extreme, even for me, who I like minimalist stuff. That's a little bit extreme, I find, to have it right. I don't even know if you can see that on the stream, but it's right bang up against the edge. So anyway, yeah, you can set that however you want. You can't turn collapsible regions off at the moment, but there's no need to really, because they don't take up any time. So yeah, that's and it's back. Okay. Someone does add one level of additional indentation for wrapped lines, which I think seems nice. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Yeah, that could work. What happens when the word token is no longer the windows when wrapping? What happens when the word token is longer than the word when wrapping? Oh, we see, yeah, if you've got a really long token like that, I haven't really thought about that, to be honest. It probably just... It kind of copes okay, but yeah, I probably should split it if it's that long. So yeah, I'll look into that. Okay, we're running low on time now. I don't know whether... I mean, if you've got questions, ask them. I'm just trying to decide whether to actually go into... I was going to go into detail on word wrapping and how collapsible regions and how it actually works. I think I need to rest my voice a bit. I've been talking far too loudly. Let's just quickly do it. You can ask questions if it doesn't make sense. I'll just blitz through it. Since I went to the trouble and created this slide for you, I think I should probably use it. Okay, so as you probably know if you've been watching these streams, the way I store the lines is, the way I store text is per line, so I just have an array of lines, simple as you like. Question about the 1.0 bugs. I'll get onto that, as soon as I've talked about this. So at the moment, before I did the word wrap, it was very, very simple, just an array of lines, and then I have an array of visible lines, which are just, those are the lines you can see, and then as you scroll, I just replace these. So you can think of these as the text meshes that you see on the screen. And that's very simple. So what I realized I needed to do for actually both of these tasks, because I was just going to do word wrap and forget collapsible regions, but I realized that the thing I needed to do was the same for both tasks, which turned out to be really nice in the end, so I did both of them. So now in between the lines array, which is the actual text of the file, and the visible lines, which is what's displayed on the screen, I now have an intermediate lines array, which is what I call the display lines. So as you can see, one line in the file, obviously, you probably can't see my mouse, can you? It's annoying. How can I do? Okay, I'll draw on it. So maybe. So you've got lines and you've got display lines, and as you can see, one line here can map to multiple lines here, obviously, for the word wrap. So this mlines doesn't change at all when it word wraps, it's just display lines that changes. And then visible lines is the same as it was before, except now working on lines, it works on display lines. Okay, so I've added an intermediate representation, obviously. And as I said, the nice thing about that is it works for collapsible regions. So if I've got this region here and I'm going to collapse it, these lines just don't map to anything. And then just the display lines, which are the ones that are going to be shown, and then just the visible lines, which are on the screen. So simple, really. And once I realized, it took me a stupidly long time to realize how simple it was, because I was worrying, I think this is why I was putting off word wrap for so long. I was worrying that it's going to require me to rewrite all of the editing, commands that worked on mlines, but I realized almost everything stays the same and can still work on mlines. Display lines is literally, as it says, just for the display. It's not quite that simple, but I realized once I got my head around that, I could add all of this display line stuff, get word wrap working, collapsible regions working, and hardly have to touch any of the rest of the code. But there are certain things, obviously, that do need to work in display line space. I started thinking about it like when I was working on game engines where you have local space and global space, and I kept having to think, all right, am I working in line space or am I working in display line space? Because obviously when you click on the code, you're working on the display lines, because that's what you see. And for example, if you collapse a region, obviously, and you're moving the cursor up and down, that's working on the display lines because it's skipping over all of these lines in between. So anything where you're interacting with it, you're working on display lines. When you're editing it, then you're working on lines, with one or two exceptions. What was I going to say? Yeah, I was going to say the cursor is actually stored as it always was in the lines array here. I mean, I could have stored it either in display lines or in lines, but it just turned out to be a whole lot simpler to keep the cursor stored in the way it has been, so that none of my editing functions need to change. And then, for example, when you click somewhere, it converts obviously the cursor from display line space into M lines. So I needed a way of mapping one way and the other way. So when you click, it maps back to this one, and when you're, say, displaying the cursor, it maps from this space back to this space. The way I decided to do it was I already had a struct for each line, which was just literally storing the text string. Now it stores a display line pointer, which points to the display line struct. And I realized all I needed to do in a display line struct was store the length for the word wrap. Because obviously, don't forget, when the collapsible regions, you just don't, there are no display lines for the collapsed region. So there's no need to do anything special for that. But the word wrap, you need to know that this one line maps to 3 lines here. And with that one bit of information, you can work out everything else, which is really nice. So I think someone just asked about the memory. Is it 2 times the storage? No, it's not, because the display lines are literally just storing an int and a pointer, which is really fast and not much memory. And anyway, most of the memory in 10x is dominated by the parser rather than the actual file you've got open. That's quite minimal in comparison to everything else. So I could have doubled it and you probably wouldn't have noticed. But anyway, it turned out to be really simple display line struct. So as I said, I needed a way to map both ways, one to the other, and to do it in a fairly optimal manner, because it'd be very easy to make this very, very slow. So as you can see, the line stores a pointer to the display line, and the display line stores a pointer to the line. So I can easily go from one to the other, but there's one big problem. All text operations work on line numbers and positions rather than pointers. So say you click on a display line, I know what line it is. I've got a pointer to the line, the structure of the line, but I really need to know the position, the index of the line, because all of my editing operations work on positions. So I needed a way to find out the index of the line struct in the lines array. So I need to find out where it is. So I've got a line, I need to find out where it is. And obviously I can just do an index of, but that's going to be quite slow. Because if you imagine you might have, say, 100,000 line file, if every operation you do, you're going to have to look up a line struct in the entire array. It's going to be quite slow. I mean, it's not terribly slow. I did measure it, and it was almost imperceptible. You know, it's like a few nanoseconds or something, even for the biggest file. So it probably would have been okay, but these operations, when you're editing, can happen loads and loads of times in just one key press. You know, so I didn't want to be doing it over and over again. That would be really, really inefficient. So I came up with a way to cache that, which I don't think I've got time to go into now, but I can quickly show you. What was it? Index array, that's the one. So what I did was I actually added something which I haven't shown in this struct, which is called index hint, and there's one of those in each struct, because I need to be able to do the same thing for both, and that stores where where this struct is in the array. So it stores its own internal index. And obviously that can go out of sync, which is why I've only called it a hint. Because as soon as you add lines, it's going to shift everything down and then all the indexes will be wrong. So what I did was I just added this one templated function. See if we can get it all on screen. One templated function, and obviously if the index hint is right, it will just return that, because obviously you can tell if it's right or not. You just compare the array against what it's pointing to. If it's not right, then it will scan, it will do an index of, where is it? It'll do an index of, and then it will fix up the index hints for all lines above and below it in a 100 line range. So I've got to fix that range of 100. So 100 lines before and 100 lines after, it'll just set the indexes to make them correct. Because you don't need to set it on the entire file. So it just means that these index hints get updated as and when you need it, just once, like per frame or something. And you don't need to do the entire file each time. It just updates as you go. And that turned out to be quite a good solution. It's not perfect, because there are, real edge cases where if you do an edit at the top of the file and then jump to the end of the file, it's going to do a potentially expensive index of, but it shouldn't really be noticeable, and it'll only happen very occasionally. So if you notice any stalls, do let me know, because you should never notice a stall from that. So yeah, that was the one bit of interesting sort of thing I had to do to keep it optimal. So are M lines stored in order of line number? Yeah, exactly. So I'll just quickly show you. I think I talked about this in one of my other streams, but so in my text editor class, I've literally just got an array of lines, which is an array of lines, and the line struct, as I said, you can ignore all these functions there. They don't really need to be there. It just stores the text and now the index hint. Oh, and I had to store a load of stuff for the collapsible scope ID, so I know where to render these and where they can be collapsed and if they're collapsed or not, as you'd expect. But nothing that interesting there. And that's the display line pointer, obviously. And then the display line, as I said, just has a pointer back to the line and a length and the index hint, and that's it. So it adds very little overhead in terms of memory or speed. So index of, no, it's actually going through the array and so iterating through the array linearly and finding where it is. So if you imagine, so my lines array is just a array of pointers. And if you give it a line struct, you want to say, well, where is this in the array? Now, the only way to do that is to iterate through this array and find where that line is, which is obviously a potentially slow process. So yeah, that's what GetIndexOf does. Anyway, hopefully that made sense. I went pretty fast through it. Obviously, yeah, array of pointers rather than array of lines. Yeah, so hopefully that made some sense. It was quite a speedy tour through, but I just wanted to share it because I've been putting this off for ages because I thought it was gonna be a real pain to do. I wasn't looking forward to it for some reason. I think also because I never used collapsible regions myself or word wrap, so I just kind of didn't want to do it, and I was putting it off. And I think that's why, I spent so long, like 3 months, just working on bugs and feature requests from people before I actually decided to take a full entire week off all bugs and just get my head down and do it. And it actually turned out to be quite a fun thing to do and a really nice, elegant solution. So I'm pretty pleased with it. It's very optimal, and hopefully it works as you expect. I mean, I'm sure, as you said in the chat, there'll be one or two things which could be improved or changed, but they should all be fairly minor changes now. The main body of the work is done. Mark's just saying about the visible lines, design worked really well, and I'm really pleased with that. as you say, so the visible line stuff hasn't changed. I literally just point at display lines instead of pointing at lines now, and all of that is the same. So very little code from what I was expecting. I thought, pretty much all the code would have to change, and yeah, fortunately I designed it in a nice way without even really thinking about this. It just kind of worked. So that was a relief, to be honest. That was, yeah, really nice. So anyway, unless you have any more questions about how all that works, I think I'll wrap it up now. Was there anything else? Oh, the map scrollbar I had to do, I won't go into that now, but I had to do quite a bit of work to get that working. So when you turn word wrap on, yeah, as you can see, probably not the best file to show it on. Let's find a smaller one. Oh, I hope if I actually turn it on. The map scrollbar now updates its word wrapping in the map scrollbar as well, which was a little bit fiddly to do. But I thought that was the best way to do it. Otherwise, your scrollbar is going to go out of sync with what you're actually seeing. And also, I mean, this is something I wasn't quite sure. I'd be interested to know everyone's opinions on what on earth's happened here. Why is that being tabbed in? That's very odd. Seems like word wrap is actually changing some tabbing. Am I just going crazy? What just happened there? Let's try another file. Maybe I just did something else. Seems fine. Anyway, yeah, so I'm updating the map scrollbar. And also, what was I saying, with the collapsible regions, so when you collapse it, it actually collapses it in the map scrollbar as well. Now I know some editors don't do that, they just highlight it or something. But in a way it turned out to be easier to do that than to not do that. So let's go to the header. Collapse the whole lot. So as you can see, as I collapse it here, it collapses it in the map scrollbar. But let me know what you think about that, because I could change it so it doesn't collapse it, it just highlights it and then skips over. But anyway, I kind of quite like it. I think it's quite a neat solution. So yeah, see what you think. Would it be better if you move the middle line saves the screen when you move the top of the windows? Yes, definitely. I've got a bug for that somewhere. I need to add that. It's because it's inside the namespace scope. Oh yeah, the tabbing. Maybe that's what it was. Yeah, okay. So I think that was everything on my list I wanted to cover. I'm going to try and do these a bit more regularly now that I'm feature complete. Getting close to release, so I'll try and do it every week or two, but we'll see how that goes. So yeah, next is just bugs and polish. I'm currently going through my bug database yet again, and now have 637 bugs. So yeah, it's going to take a while, but obviously I'm not going to get all of them fixed for version 1, but I'm going to be selective, so we'll see how that goes. Bug count limit aside, I don't know yet. It's I'm really going to take it on a case-by-case basis and just see what bugs I've got, and I'm not going to do it on an arbitrary count. I'm just going to see what I think really does need to be fixed. So I'm really going to rely on everyone that's using 10x to give me feedback on stuff you think, no, this really does need to be fixed for release, and help me to prioritize it. So yeah, I'm going to see how it goes. I'll be updating over the coming weeks, and I'm guessing probably at least a couple of hundred bugs out of that 600 need to be fixed. But we'll see how it goes. So anyway, I think I'll leave it there. And thanks for all the questions and comments. And enjoy using 10x. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.